Welcome to In the Hot Seat, where each week we put the latest in tech news in the hot seat to tell you whether it's good or whether it's not. I thought I'd practice my thumb signals.
We're bringing the paddles next week. You're all getting the paddles. I'm going to finish the signs of them.
All right. Well, let's get into it. All right. The first one is a fun story about Anthropic and Samsung. Now, I should say this: the story read early talks, so this is early, and neither company has actually confirmed it. But it's interesting. TechCrunch, I guess, talked to Anthropic, and they said they hadn't changed their hardware strategy, stays diversified across Google, Amazon, NVIDIA chips, but they declined comment more. And the idea, of course, is that following last week's OpenAI announcement with Broadcom for their custom inference chip announcement, Anthropic, which we've seen answer or lead, depending on which end of it they happen to be on at the time, those announcements. So probably not a big surprise, but, Frontier Lab talking about a second partner beyond the TSMC dependent NVIDIA, Google TPUs is definitely a big supply chain diversification signal anyway. And it's not a signed deal. Scope, volume chips, not known yet, all those kind of disclaimers. But again, custom silicon for internal workloads could definitely reduce reliance on NVIDIA, which has been, one of the constraints and certainly a cost constraint. So I don't know. What do you guys think?
How long does it take a chip like this to come to market?
Doesn't need to come to market.
In the age, well, exactly. There's no market. It's coming to somebody's pocket. From one pocket to another.
So in the age of generative, it's fast.
It's
just fast.
So you think you're gonna
the major.
What do you mean fast? Is that within weeks or months or a year?
That depends on the ability of this funny company in the Netherlands to deliver.
Okay.
See. Yeah.
So, but in general, that's weeks these days. It's just weeks because the real time is needed for the design normally. So that's weeks. So from that perspective, well, let them talk about it. I mean, they need to do it anyways, because what's the main constraint for all these types of companies, including the users of hyperscalers?
Yeah.
The cost of the hyperscaler.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it really does show a shift in the focus, though, right? Because we've been so focused on, gee, which model is going to be next and how great is it? And you forget about the fact that these companies eventually, if they're going to go public, which they say they are, they have to figure out a way to show some sort of business plan that would lead to a profit, which means they've got to cut those infrastructure costs significantly in a very short period of time.
Yeah.
And it also raises the question of what will this do for consumer pricing, right? When you have
well, there's no longer a monopoly, right?
That much. That much.
I don't know.
I'm with Christy on this one.
No. The effect on consumer pricing will not come by an Anthropic or a Google or a Meta or what other FRs creating their own chip. That pressure will come from other companies who are not able or willing to just throw another billion of funds into further development, but that needed to learn to work with constraints and hence are doing it cheaper. That will be the pressure. So from that perspective, what Anthropic does right now is a reaction on two fronts. First, on get the same as Altman says, hey, we are doing our own chips. And second, be able at all to follow the cost leaders and price leaders.
But I think too, you talk about the consumer pricing, probably not, but when you start to think about where they're actually going to make most of their money, enterprise licensing, at some stage, that is going to be one of the negotiating factors. If I'm an enterprise company trying to set this deal, I'm going to go, and by the way, infrastructure costs have gone down by what, right? So that is a leverage point. How much of one, I guess we'll see. But
so they just need it. So that's basically it.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see what it does to NVIDIA.
That is the interesting one. NVIDIA and
Yeah.
the chip makers as such, because most Samsung is building their own chips. They are manufacturing themselves.
Yeah.
Compared
and I mean the same thing with Broadcom last week, right? They're
Yeah.
also in the game. So and
Yeah.
I'm sure others are lining up to do that as well.
yeah.
But how
So
much, I mean, just since the AI revolution, quote unquote, started, how
Which
much
one?
has NVIDIA's, yeah, I know, how much has NVIDIA's stock increased in their net worth, right? Like it's like
Yeah.
Gazillions.
skyrocketed. They're worth, aren't they the company that's worth the most money in the world
I hadn't
right
checked
now?
it today, but they have been off and on for quite a while.
Right.
Mm,
So
yeah.
how does this knock them out of that first place?
Or
It'll
does
be
it?
interesting to watch. Or does it? Yeah.
I mean,
maybe
right
that's-
now it doesn't change the fact that their chips are still the highest performance chips on that workload. Now, a year from now we could be talking about how they were unseated and they're now third or whatever. But until
Well,
that
and-
happens, I don't think that changes a lot.
You think
Yeah.
about the global economy perspective too, right? Didn't China start making their own chips because they couldn't get the NVIDIA chips or there were tariffs on them or something? So it's not just companies in the US that are doing this now.
Well, they were opened up to the tier 2 chips from NVIDIA, which means they're now making tier 2 chips in China.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying.
yeah. And then one could say more or less in jest that Taiwan is a part of China, right? At least in some wise views.
It depends on who you're asked.
Yeah.
Which is the bigger limit on their capacity at this point? Is it going to be the supply of chips, or is it going to be the supply of energy?
I mean, we know that water is going to be an issue, energy is going to be an issue, the number of data centers, and we're starting to see data center restrictions. I mean, there are a lot of infrastructure changes and pressures that you're seeing. So where do they put that pressure going forward? I don't know.
No, but the immediate pressure is the chips.
Yeah.
Because
I mean, that's the most obvious one,
they
right?
can't build the data centers fast enough.
Yeah.
That's the one that's sitting on somebody's desk at the moment.
The other interesting part of this is, we saw, when I started with right out of college, I ran tapes around a tape floor for EDS, right? And all of your hardware was on site back in those days, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we graduated to the cloud, and now we've got AI, and it's interesting to see now we're starting to see the companies manufacturing your own hardware again. So that's also kind of an interesting cycle.
Yeah, but necessary, because I mean, look at abstracting away from open AI or one of those LLM companies or LLM labs. Yeah. So the promise of a hyperscaler was we can do it cheaper, which is true as long as you are small enough. After that, you need to factor in their 30% profit margin that they want to have. And all of a sudden, they are no more cheaper. So you're better off doing it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you think of historically, there's pretty good evidence that focusing on owning your entire stack can be extremely profitable. Oracle, for example, because that is in fact the strategy they launched, I don't know, 20 years ago and have continued to pursue and launched a bunch of different hardware products through the years and, et cetera. So it doesn't surprise me. It is an enterprise play to try to own as much of it as you can. And I mean, Zoho owns their entire infrastructure as well. And there are other companies that, they're good examples of those around.
Well, it's not only the infrastructure. Well, I guess depending how you define infrastructure, right? It's the infrastructure and supply chain, right? The fact that they own the supply chain is, I think, the bigger story here, because that's where you have the holdup, as the need and requirements and consumption continue to increase, and you need to get things quickly. You're held to a supply chain that you have no control over. In this way, they have complete control, right?
Yeah.
So it could, again, this is all speculation. Is it going to happen? Who knows, right? This is not a headline that's this is happening. However, given that OpenAI announced their relationship with Broadcom last week, I think we might hear this headline come out pretty positively happening in the next few days.
I mean, I don't think it's any surprise, right? That
Right.
they are putting pressure on each other, you know, and it goes, and the ball goes back and forth every week, depending on which end it's on. That's not a surprise. I think you're right.
It's just a tit for tat,
yeah, it is.
So the pre-seed is the hype, but the headline is the heat, and that, right, it's probably more than likely going to happen, and it makes sense in the race right now. And obviously the one who owns the supply chain the best and can manufacture the quickest and can get things out to market and you know, all those things behind it, that's going to be the winner in this game.
Well, I mean,
and it doesn't necessarily happen
because they don't own the supply chain. They don't even control it.
No,
it's a partnership.
It's a partnership,
and this partnership is as good as both parties honor it.
Yeah. But I mean, too, it doesn't have to be Samsung. Remember, I mean, this is an indication of a discussion, but there are other chip manufacturers that could be involved in this conversation. This is just what we've seen, and where they're having to push to start with. The negotiation may not work out there, and they may have to go somewhere else. But I think the direction is pretty obvious, and frankly, from a business perspective, makes sense.
Look at Apple going back to Intel.
So
yeah,
I think we vote.
Yeah, I think it's time for a vote. So what do you guys think? Hype, not?
I think
That's
and no,
and Jody is being
up or down.
Jody is not voting.
All right, I'm going to go with this when the actual story hits. The headline right now is hype. The story will be heat.
I'm not sure the headline's hype. The headline is thin on detail. How about that?
just following, and there's no spec, no nothing. It's just words. So
yeah,
nothing.
Well, I appreciate your statement around weeks, Thomas. I will say, from being involved and seeing some of this stuff on the manufacturing side, I think the actual creation and production piece of it would probably take a little bit longer than weeks, but you know,
maybe. But I mean, you are talking about different scales of money.
There's only one customer.
But still, machines can only run as quickly as right. They have some constraints, so that's all I'll say on that one. Our next headline.
All right, this one's interesting from a few different. I guess from a competitive position more than anything, but Google imposed hard usage limits on Meta's access to Gemini models after Meta requested more compute capacity than Google can deliver. The vendors, neither company's framed it as a strategic shift publicly, but it's disruptive from a Meta perspective because they are using, they're using Gemini a lot in their own business, and of course now they've had to step back from that some, and they're talking about moving workloads onto Muse Spark and other, internal models. I mean, hyperscaler openly unable to serve top tier clients' demands, was 180 billion in capex. I mean, it's unusual, but it is a discussion that I suspect we're not going to see the end of coming soon.
This is funny from a variety of angles. One is that Facebook is using Google models that much instead of their free ones.
Instead of the ones they own, you mean?
And the second one is, hey, everybody and their dogs are telling us that cloud is infinitely elastic. Apparently, it's only as elastic as the number of servers available. So there are hard limits.
There are hard constraints in that equation, right?
Yeah, and the third one is, if I were Amazon or AWS or Microsoft, I'd be rolling on the floor laughing right now.
I mean, they probably are. But it is a little bit, if you're an enterprise customer, especially a large one, it is a little bit troubling and is an indication that perhaps we need to think about this multi-model strategy and fallback plans, contingencies, all those sorts of things as I'm planning and rolling this out, because as you can see, even the biggest customers with a very large spend can be, constrained by their suppliers' capacity.
Well, it seems like Meta was first of all doing this because their particular product was not, they wasn't working all that well, so they were having to use somebody else. And when you're looking at a software bill of materials, if you will, and saying, okay, ours isn't good enough, we got to use somebody else. And now that somebody else goes, no, we can't quite take care of you on everything you want. It seems like they can squeeze in, one more consumer into the cracks, but I mean, let's face it, Meta's asking for a lot.
Well, the interesting part of it doesn't work that well is, aren't they selling it to everybody else instead of using it themselves? So,
well, I mean,
that's kind
that's
of funny.
an interesting question. It is, right? I mean, there's a conflict there, but also there behind the scenes, if you'll remember the recent announcement that Google's actually buying capacity from SpaceX as well.
Yeah.
So
As
the web of
Anthropic
this
is,
infrastructure is very complicated.
Yeah, but Google's Google, right? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Wow, but I mean, you could argue Meta's Meta too. I mean, that's they're not tiny. That's not your mom and pop shop on the corner.
And basically buying from SpaceX seems like, okay, my competitor has capacity they're not using, so hey.
I mean, they're all competitors and frenemies, I guess is the
frenemy is the word.
I think you have. I mean, you have to be a frenemy in this space, right? I mean, it is the way in which everything is interrelated. The webs and weaves cross each other constantly. The headlines say one story, but the behind the scenes is perhaps telling a different story. So, yeah,
that kind of goes back to trying to get your own chip and get something that's more efficient and more effective. All it's about is figuring out how to create more capacity because, or use the available capacity more efficiently.
Well, and let's back up a second and think about, right? We're still in the, I want to be careful how I say this because depending how this clips out, it could be taken completely wrong.
Just do it.
We're still in the early phases, if you will, in the grand scheme of things, of people truly understanding how to use AI, how to build the AI workflows, how to prompt, which again all drives back to consumption, right? Token usage, etc. We're trying to make teams smarter, right? We're trying to really think through our processes, but the reality is there's still a lot of people out there playing and testing and burning through tokens, right? Like, how long is that going to last until we become more efficient in our processes, until we understand, hey guys, I know you're using an AI prompt for literally everything you do on every project that you do, but like we got to scale it back a little bit and do, go back 101, build out certain things manually and then prompt that. I mean, could that be the way of the future to help minimize what's happening with token usage? I don't know.
The way of the future
I suspect you're going to
getting back to sanity and not doing every shit, and I use that word deliberately, or for every shit, the most expensive tool at hand.
Yes.
But older technology that
but,
already is
but again,
you're
talking about this from the perspective of every enterprise is intelligently going into this and looking at it from the perspective of they need a return. Right now, every enterprise that's going into this is going into this mostly because the board told them to, or the executives feel too much pressure, or the competitors have already done it and made an announcement. There's a reckoning. I don't, and if you look at some of the projections, I mean, I think Gartner said something like 40% of the companies that are deploying agents now will abandon the projects by the end of 27. I mean, I don't think there is going to be a fallout, and there are going to be companies that have figured out and they do understand they're trying to get a return, and there are others that are going to figure out that whatever they didn't provide any return, and they're going to abandon it because they don't understand it.
Well, I mean, is in terms of the enterprise level and relationships with these big guys like with Anthropic and OpenAI, is the contract language changing? That is, are they changing the language about capacity in the contract?
I don't know, but I will say, if I'm a negotiator, if I'm a negotiator, I'm going to negotiate, from an enterprise contract perspective, then I'm going to negotiate, certain capacity in that deal, right? Or at least I'm going to try.
Yeah.
Thanks for agreeing to a higher price.
But
it will, I'm sure. But.
Wouldn't you somewhere on the back end, and I know when I was working with the last company I was helping out with the AI product, one of the things we built into the back end was a fail-safe that if one of those LLMs is busy and can't return a call, jump immediately to this one and use this prompt. And so you would think these guys would start trying to leverage all of the different things that are out there, just like the old failover model.
Yeah, I mean, you're starting to see pressure around that and conversations around that as well. When when you talk about what companies are doing and how they're planning their projects, they need plug and play from a model perspective, capacity perspective, all of those things. And frankly, the latest government intervention in 2 model releases tell you that there's also a completely uncontrolled constraint that you may get that's totally unpredictable, that could pull a model off your system for an indeterminate amount of time with no input from you.
Yeah.
I think there is a hint on the screen.
Thank you for catching that, Thomas.
Nice bridge. Nice bridge.
Well, I think that's good. So, all right. So let's vote. What do you think? Is this? Yeah, it is. I mean, let's be honest.
But it is. Then moving on.
Yeah. Well, moving on, because this last one, I mean, we're starting to see a bunch of fragmented rules coming out, but this one, Governor Pritzker just signed an AI Safety Measures Act, requires model developers to publish how they assess catastrophic risk and submit to independent third-party safety audits. Why it matters, this follows California, New York, Colorado has rules too. A lot of state-by-state rules that are becoming a real compliance challenge. And Washington, actually, some of the rules lately have come in that sort of preempt some of what the states are trying to do to control things. So this is getting to be a regulatory mess in the U.S. And I mean, in the EU, the EU AI Act is coming into effect, part of it at least in August. So from a compliance standpoint, it's getting very, very complicated.
And actually, there's a model of this in history, and that goes back to transportation in the late 1800s. And the railroads were going nuts, and the different states were trying to regulate them, and the railroads are going, hey, we can't change what we're doing as we cross the border from Indiana to Illinois. I think we're
just change the gauge of the tracks. That solves everything.
Yeah, right.
Well, this did bring up.
That's kind of the same thing going on here, and that's. But to me, it looks a little bit like they're telling everybody you have to do what Anthropic and OpenAI are to some extent already doing anyway, and so it's. Who's actually going to be hit by this? Who's actually going to have to change their behavior?
From when I saw this headline, it brought back anxiety attacks from when GDPR, CCPA, when they were rolling out all of those regulations on the marketing side, right? The idea that this is state by state is just crazy. And if I am not an advocate for generally forcing things across the country in a uniformed manner. In this particular case, I am, because of, again, what we've all lived through with the regulations around, the email,
Privacy.
can spam, privacy. It was, I mean, when you go state by state, it is, I'll speak from my marketing, my CMO hat on. It's a nightmare to put all of those things in place on the back end and manage. This is 1,000 times worse.
Well, and let's be frank about it. There is little chance that you're going to see any federal regulations in the U.S. for AI. There's the same that happened with privacy, right? We simply don't address those things from a federal level, and from an AI perspective, right now there's zero appetite for that level of regulation at the federal level.
And adding on to what Jody said, so even countrywide is not big enough for some topics.
I mean, it does.
Well, I mean, it
create more problems.
This one even more than privacy. This should be globally addressed.
It's the least common denominator, right? If EU has harder regulations, do you build two different ways to comply, or do you just meet the more stringent regulation? If I'm a provider, I'm probably just going to build to that least common denominator.
But if Wyoming comes up with a different set of rules that are harder to meet, then what you do with a Wyoming is just say, okay, you can't have our model in Wyoming because it's not worth the trouble to meet the new standard.
Well,
if it's a smaller state would have no power in this.
The problem is that marketers, unlike Jody, would like to have the less stringent applied.
But it doesn't matter what is applied. It needs to be consistent. Otherwise, you have things like you have healthcare state regulations all over the place, where if you're going to do business in Kentucky, it's this. And if you're going to do business in Connecticut, it's that. And you need to know all of those. And your code has to be built to account for all of those, depending on where you're doing business.
Well, and then let's break this down. Does it mean where the company is headquartered, or as this branches out, if there is working remotely, if there's a developer who sits in Montana, but the company is headquartered in Illinois? Does that? I mean, there is a lot that can be unpacked there, right? And what I found really
simple.
What about India and Germany?
Frame the wording of the law about usage, and all of a sudden it's defined. But it doesn't matter where the developer sits, whether that's the place in Idaho we talked about before.
But I mean, in the end, global, Christy, your point's good, I think. Global, sure. But how do you get there? What sort of a standards body could actually create something that could get passed in the EU and in the US and in India and China? And I don't have a lot of hope there. To be
well, the other interesting thing that I found about this release is the protections for the whistleblowers. When someone sees something that, that if we step back and think about this in practice, that to me is probably one of the more interesting pieces of this law, because of what that means, right? In terms of who is responsible for raising the hand. And let's face it, if I remember, is it up to $3 million? Was that what the article said? A $3 million fine, civil penalties? I mean, that's a lot of money. 1 million for first and 3 for repeat violations. And you see what's happening now with whistleblowers. I mean, this is going to be interesting to watch how the other states follow suit. To your point, Michael, right? We're not going to see anything federally mandated anytime soon, which means the headaches are about to be compounded state by state.
And one last thought, when that happens, that slows innovation and it slows progress.
Yeah, it does.
Well, it makes it such a complicated mess, right? That's the point. If everybody regulates it differently, then you've got 50 different ways to look at the compliance just in the U.S. and a different one in the EU. That's significant. And frankly, the lab, some of the labs, I mean, Anthropic and OpenAI both have frameworks already, and they do a certain amount of independent verification and audit. but when does that's not required. So, I mean, that's only as good as it is convenient, I suppose.
Right.
Well,
All right,
there's
let's
a lot to uncover here before this goes into effect in 2027. So we'll be talking about it again.
That. We will definitely be talking about this again. All right. So what do you guys think? I mean,
it's heat.
Yeah, that's heat.
It's kind of.
That's a good one.
I can't do this,
like it.
but
I like it for what it says. I don't like it particularly because it's just different from all the others.
the fragmentation is
the fragmentation.
the issue. Frankly. But yeah. Okay. Well,
No, but
that's our episode for this week. Thanks everybody for joining. Make sure you check us out next week. We also have a newsletter coming out over the weekend. So, enjoy, and we'll see you next week.